Time here up at the top table. Thank you for coming back. Did anybody manage to beat 5 mushroom vol au vents? No, I'm the winner. That's fine. Okay, right. Grand. This next session is going to look at how organisations are preparing for how work may develop, how it may actually adapt. Now, we mentioned Jacob Rees-Mogg this morning. He's obviously not prepared to adapt, but the fact is businesses are going to have to. You know, the cat is out of the bag. We found out through the pandemic we didn't have to work that way. There were things we were doing that actually didn't make a lot of sense. And that's kind of got to be built into an organisational structure now, and how we approach people and what our expectations of people. Our first speaker is Andrew Dobbie, CEO and founder of MadeBrave. And he wants to put this into context for us, how COVID has changed business culture. So, Andrew, over to you.
Afternoon, everyone. I was laughing there because I was kind of strolling in. I thought I could be here for 1:30 to talk at 3. So poor Ray was having a heart attack, wondering if I was going to turn up. But it's nice to be here, isn't it? Nice to be at our bedrooms. I'm Andrew. As Mark said, I'm going to give you a little bit. First of all, a little bit of context about my business, if you've never come across MadeBrave and the journey I've been on. And then I was going to talk a little bit about the last couple of years, how we've adapted. And then how we've adapted since then as well. And, you know, it'd be nice as well to hear today just how other businesses, so I'm keen to talk to other people after I chat to you just now. So a brave new world, I think, like Mark said, a lot of the world that we lived in before was great. A lot of it wasn't quite so great. MadeBrave, we're a global strategic brand agency. I started my journey 10 years ago when this little guy, this is Finn, I'd left my job. I'd been working for the ex-Celtic and ex-Scotland footballer Paul McStay. I know nothing about football, and I think you probably quite like that about me. And I left my job when Finn here was a couple of weeks old. He didn't look like that. He probably looked a little bit more like that at the time. I thought, what a great time to leave your job when you've got a 2-week-old kid, you've got no money. So I set off to set up MadeBrave, and it was kind of money driven for me, first of all, because I had to put a roof over the head and pay for childcare and nappies and all these things that we know are expensive. He now looks like this, so he's grown into a fine young man. This was the first MadeBrave office, so you can see Finn was there in his little basket that day. It's not very pleasant to look at, so I'll skip on by. And this was, within about a year, I'd moved into this office. I had gone from nobody to about 6 people in my team. And within another year, I'd gone to this office. I had about 16 people in my team. I hadn't been to the bank or borrowed any money. And we now have a team of over 60 MadeBravers who are all way more talented and creative than I ever was. We now are fortunate enough. We've scaled and scaled and scaled, and we now work with most of the biggest brands in the world, huge global international brands. And we've got 3 locations throughout Scotland. So we've got a place here in Edinburgh, we've got an office in London, and our HQ over in Glasgow, where I've come from today. This is our studio, which looks a lot like the inside of my head, and has been sitting as empty as this for the last couple of years, probably like most of your offices. And you may have come across my home office on LinkedIn. This post I put, I think like everyone, I was kind of stuck in a tiny little loft in my home, and I slowly upgraded it over the pandemic until I eventually made this kind of office boffy in the garden, and it got 2.6 million views on LinkedIn, and I could not keep up with the messages that were coming in. So it seems like I hit a chord with the future of working, if this is not it. And that's where I also, shameless plug here, I also run my podcast from. So if you're interested in brand and creativity, I sit down monthly with the world's best-in-class people, and I steal a little bit of knowledge from their brains. So probably half of the things I'm telling you today is their knowledge and not mine, but it's a good excuse to kind of get and chat to them. And at MadeBrave, we're on a mission to inspire creativity. So my job today, if I do it well, is to inspire something in you that you take back to your businesses, or I might inspire a little bit of bravery to help you set off and start your own business, and I hope I do that. I truly believe that the best businesses, the best brands, they're all built from people, and they're built from the inside out. So your job as a leader is to facilitate, make those people feel as safe, empowered, and really, you know, no matter whether you run a product, a service-based business, it's people that ultimately do that. I'm also hugely passionate about running your business with values. These are some of the MadeBrave values. I'll not go deep into them just now. But I really believe you can use these as behaviours that you want to see within your team, but also your wider customer base and the tribe that you're trying to build as a business. And ultimately at MadeBrave, we help brands become and find and be the bravest version of themselves. And if you're thinking, what work do you do, Andrew, as well as all this? The Johnny Walker Princess Street, we're the agency behind helping launch Johnny Walker to the world last year in a pandemic. So we created all this beautiful content, which is not easy when it's a pandemic. It's also a construction site as well and trying to create this kind of stuff. We're also just in the process of launching a European-wide campaign for Velux, who they've landed at a perfect time now because we all did stop spending our money on holidays and we all started building and DIY and putting windows into our houses. So we're the agency helping bring Velux to the world at the moment. You might also recognise a giant toy bus. This was a few years ago for First Bus. They asked us in Glasgow to help tell the world that they had some eco-friendly buses coming to Glasgow. And so I said, let me build a giant toy bus with a real double-decker in it. And weirdly enough, they let us do it. And we've also been trusted with brands like Doritos, Tennent's Lager, and most of the whiskies in Scotland we tend to have worked with at one point or another. But at MadeBrave, I've always been keen from the very day to not only be famed for our work. I've always looked at it that there's 22,000 other agencies in the UK. And I would hope they're all doing great work, and I think they're probably all trying to do great work. So it's like any product or service, that needs to be brilliant as a business. And I've always tried to create a great culture and a great brand as well, because I believe the combination of the three of those things is really powerful. And if I can create a great culture, I'll attract the best people to my business, they'll create the best work, and it self-fulfills. So yeah, the people of MadeBrave are truly what build my business. And someone was asking earlier on how many people work and help develop the MadeBrave brand. So I'm giving some credit to these guys because they work closely with me day in, day out. Helping build the brand that you see if you follow us on LinkedIn or any of these platforms. And for us, we've won loads of awards, and my team always say, why do we go for these cultural awards? We've won best places to work. And I say, well, it gives us a benchmark. If I don't do this stuff, I don't know what great looks like. So this gives me a benchmark, and then I can try and improve on it every year, and that really helps. So it's a brave new world. I think the pandemic's been difficult for us all in many shapes and forms. And so I thought I'd look back to the beginning of March 2020. And this is Stephen Weir. He's my chief operations officer, and he's like the yin to my yang. So we're like polar opposite. He's great operationally, finance, spreadsheets, planning, and I'm not, as you can imagine, right? So I'm very creative, but we work really, really well in partnership. And he said, I think we should look at this thing that's happening in China. And I said, it'll blow over, it'll be fine. And he said, no, let's put the company into 3 teams. And STV picked up that we were doing this, and we had 2 teams on rotation. We thought we were really smart, and we were going to safeguard anyone that was vulnerable. And then, like you all, 3 days later, the government told us to go home. So we were all in our bedrooms, and it was pretty stressful. I think we can all agree. I think sometimes you feel as the founder, as the leader of a business, that you're meant to have all the answers. And I remember going for dinner. I stayed in Eaglesham, which is outside Glasgow, and I went for a restaurant with my friend who's got a company with about 250 people. And I had tears coming down my eyes because my sales pipeline that month went from a confirmed about 350 grand to 50 grand. Everyone was phoning up, cancelling every film shoot that we had, every piece of work. And I thought, fuck, I'm losing my business here. This is over. And it took me about 10 days. I was like really in a dark place. And I'm sure we all had that in one way or another. And I was thinking, this huge responsibility. I've got all these people, and I've got all their families, and and it lay really heavy. And we just spent all this money on our office, and we had a big party, and and 3 weeks later, I was on LinkedIn, and I was talking about how it affected my mental health. But I feel it's really important to do this stuff because, again, as leaders, you're often expected to have all the answers. We're just little human beings like everyone else, and we're trying our best. And so I put out what I was feeling and what was happening to me, and loads of positivity came back. But it also showed my team that it's okay to talk about this stuff, because I think we're often taught that you come into work and you leave every problem at home, And I'm kind of like, well, this is life as well as work. And I would hope if I'm in a place of stress that my team's going to look after me. And so our job as a leadership team is to help create that safe space where people can talk as well. So remember, my purpose is to inspire creativity and bravery, and my creative director said, well, this is a bloody about time that we better start working to that purpose. So let's be brave and let's inspire something in the creative industry. So we stepped forward and we thought, right, well, here's some of our values. To Infinity and Beyond is about doing brave things, going big, and doing what others haven't. This world belongs to the brave is about ask for forgiveness and not permission. So go do stuff, try stuff. And Amigos without egos is about letting everyone know that whoever has the best idea wins. So not the most senior person, it can be the most junior person or wherever the best idea comes from. So we went onto LinkedIn, we created an creative industry support group, and 4,000 people joined, which gives you an indication of where everyone's heads were at, that they needed some direction and some help. And my pal, Rachel Brown, who's the CEO of Creative Entrepreneur Club, she had this platform. We decided, let's give this for free to anyone in the creative industries, and we created a job board, we created one-to-one mentorships, and then we did, like a lot of people, we did a whole host of webinars. And the purpose behind these were to share the stories of what other people and how they were getting through the pandemic, in the hope that other people could kind of be a part of that, create a bit of community and share some knowledge. And we were also doing that at MadeBrave. I brought in personal branding experts, and I said to my team, look, we're not going to bump into people at events like this anymore. Every event is now on LinkedIn, and thank God I'd been putting loads of content on LinkedIn for years. Suddenly, as you all know, and you're all probably there now, everyone was suddenly on LinkedIn. And I said, we need to be the loudest, we need to give away as much information as knowledge so that when anyone starts spending, we're front of mind. And you know, every time we turned the news on, I think we all knew the world wasn't going back to normal any time. And for a lot of it, it wasn't great, really. And I think we can all see that now in hindsight, and hindsight's a great thing. We get a chance to stop and reset. And, you know, it made me think about, well, is bringing 60 people into MadeBrave in cars, is that the best thing we can do for the planet? But yeah, in some ways, like, I mourned a lot of the culture of MadeBrave. A lot of it's about that energy we had in the studio, and especially in a creative business, like creative collaboration and the kind of energy you pass between each other is really, really important. So my spidey senses sort of went off early, and I thought, right, we've got to go and lead, we've got to do something. And I said, if we don't do something, you know, well, someone's got to do something. So I look back, and we went out and we told the world, and I often do this, I often do things in the press, and I think it's a good way to hold yourself accountable to something you say you're going to do, because sometimes you can say things, and unless you've put it out into the world, you know, you can sort of waver and not do it. So I put this out and said, MadeBravers can work from anywhere, and a lot of people, forever, you know, and people say, well, you've got that amazing office, you just spent all that money in it, but something told me there was a change that needed to happen. And you know, I didn't know what I was doing, but again, that's okay. Leaders, you don't have to, and that's why we have teams. And, you know, it's okay because no one did. So someone had to do something. And so what we started to do as a leadership team is we said, let's look, as we start to reset our culture, let's look through the lens of these three things. That, you know, selfishly, if I brought everyone back into the studio, my mental health is great because I can see everyone, I've got everything in my control, I can hear any stresses, I can fix them quickly. And I've got everything in control. But it's not great on the planet. As I say, you've got 60 cars coming in and out the office every day. On the opposite hand, if I say to everyone, okay, we're shutting the office for good, great guys, listen to the board, we've just made an extra 200 grand profit because we don't have an office to pay for anymore. But what have I just done? I've just isolated 60 people. I've just put 60 people in their home, and we're social creatures. Right? We might not need to all the time, but a lot of the time we want to come together, and it's why you're all here today as well. And in my mind, a company that's inclusive, where everyone's voice is heard and where you're made up with a diverse group of people from different backgrounds, is the best company because it creates the best mixing pot of ideas. And so if I suddenly say we're all back in Glasgow, and we're not recruiting from anywhere else but Glasgow, well, I've just limited myself to the talent that we have right across the UK that could be within my business. So we're trying, as leaders, to create the sort of holy grail in the middle of those three things in my mind. And so I said to my team, let's make the office a destination. Let's make it a home for the brand, but not a mandatory place that you have to attend. And much like if you were going to the moon, right, you wouldn't get on the moon, figure out how to get there, get on there, and then tell everyone you're going to the moon. You would tell everyone you're going, and then you would say, we need to figure out how to get there together. So I said to my team, I want to be the most flexible company. I want to be the best place to work. I don't know how we're going to do it, but let's do it together. And then we stopped and we created 3 OKRs. Now, OKRs are a thing that Google invented many years ago, objectives, key results, and it's like kind of goals you can use to set direction of your business. So we created 3 of these, and we said we want to be globally renowned for creativity, so we want to show our team that we're not just Scottish in Scotland looking in. We're born in Scotland, and we're going to be the best on this planet. We want to be the best place to work for. It's a big goal, but if you don't stretch to there, you're never going to sort of push yourself. And then we want to be a financially healthy business. And I said to my team, I want to be double the size where we are, to show them that you're in an ambitious place. We're not stopping because of a pandemic. And, you know, sometimes you have to focus on different of these. I kind of talk about them in the company. I say they're like juggling balls. Sometimes at the beginning of the pandemic, when our sales pipeline dropped, well, I'm going to look at that damn financial one and I'm going to make sure there's money in the bank so I can pay your wages. But once I've fixed that problem, we're then back onto creativity, or we're back onto how this place works, etc. So we had to concentrate on how this place works as well. And you know, credit to Hannah, who's my head of people and culture, and she's great on LinkedIn if you want to get some of the insight from her head. We worked with her. She worked with a company called Flexibility Works. If you're struggling through this in your own business, these guys were a great help to us. And we came up with this idea of let's build these policies around this framework that we created around freedom, trust, and respect. And the idea being that not only the leaders of the business, the founders, the CEOs should have freedom. We should all have a bit of freedom because we've all got different lives. Some of us are caring for children. Some of us are caring for parents. Some of us, you know, we just have different stresses at home that other people don't know about. And then, but could we build this around the fact that we're all going to have respect and we're going to trust each other, that none of us are going to do anything that will impact negatively on another team member or on a client or on the business as a whole. And I was trying to just talk about having common sense as a team and looking out for one another. So we created a triple flex policy, which sounds a lot like a burger. And the idea being you had the flexibility to choose where you work best and when you work best. Flexi time, so you could start later if you were dropping kids off at school, if you're doing things at night. And then we gave we gave like 37 days annual leave, but we said, see if someone comes to you and says, we've got a girls' weekend this weekend and you're all out of holidays, come and talk to your team. And if it's okay with them, if it's okay with your line manager, and it's okay and it's not going to impact negatively on the client, take that extra holiday. So we didn't want to do unlimited holidays. I know some companies are doing that, but there tends to be a culture if you do that people feel scared to take them. So we wanted to give an overly, over an amount that you don't feel bad about taking, and then if you need more, you can still ask to get more. And then in sort of true MadeBrave style, we always believe in kind of visualizing everything we do because, when you visualize something, it's easier for human beings to remember. So we worked with this really talented artist called Alex Black. And we created this whole sort of suite of animations, illustrations, and somehow we got talking about the wrong trousers and Wallace and Gromit and the Goonies, and we were trying to do something visual to remind our team about freedom, trust and respect and flexibility. And we came up with this idea for the tech stretch pajamas, MBX 3000s. I'm seeing a lot of blank faces here. They're like, what is this guy talking about? So we turned these and we created pajamas because we thought everyone's at home anyway. So we gave everyone a pair of work attire pajamas. And then if you imagine as a new start, you get your pajamas in your pack with your laptop and you're like, well, why have I got pajamas? And it gives us an excuse to talk about freedom, trust, respect, flexibility. But I don't want to stand here and make you think I've got all the answers because I think it's easier, when you scroll through LinkedIn and you see people running companies and you think they've got it all worked out and I've not. It's not perfect at MadeBrave, We've got everyone in the office this week and we've been talking a lot about what's not working because I think we've gained a lot more flex around what we do and how we work. My company's grown from about 4 million to about 7 million turnover in the last 18 months, and we're set to do about 9 million this year. So something's working on the financial part. But I've also gained a whole host of operational HR challenges because you don't hear about stress until it's too late because someone's not been on calls, you've not seen them. Processes had to be turned upside down and reinvented and rechanged, and trying to do that while people are all over the place, it's hard, and I'm sure you've all going through those same challenges. And I think we've all lost a little bit of human connection. I don't know about you, I kind of like humans, and I like to be around them some of the time. And you know, creative collaboration is important for my business, and you know, a big part of my culture was the sort of surprise and delight stuff that we did in the office. So, like jelly, flexibility. Jelly's flexible, but it's got a bit of rigidity to it. So, someone told me at the beginning of my journey as an entrepreneur that your desk as a CEO needs to be empty, and I couldn't imagine how on earth I could do that, because I was doing marketing, I was doing operations, I was doing finance, I was leading a team, I was designing, I was doing everything. But when they told me that, over the last 10 years, I've slowly but surely tried to go like, well, how can I hire someone that's doing that finance task better than me? And all the way through until you build a team, right? So you look at every part until eventually, and this year, you know, I've definitely learned my superpowers, and I've learned my kryptonites. And in Scotland, people don't like talking about what they're good at, but I'm going to say I'm quite good at creativity, and I'm not so good. I'm more challenged by, you know, spreadsheets and planning, right? But I've learned that about myself, and I try to say to my team, don't be afraid to tell us what you're good and bad at, because then we know what tasks to give you, what tasks not to give you. And so I did one of the last final things to create an empty desk for me this year, which was I put a managing director in place. And Paul is way more experienced than me. He came and he led a client services team in an agency called JWT, which is one of the biggest network agencies in the world in London, of 120 people. He's a really kind of nice, level-headed, he's been around the block and he knows exactly what he's doing, and he joined my company. And I think this is a great thing for the pandemic as well, because I've had loads of amazing people from London come up. And I was at a conference on Tuesday and everyone was saying, but there's no talent here, there's a talent shortage. I was like, there's not. It's amazing now that they're an hour away, and now more and more people actually want to move to Scotland. And because we've now got this new way of working, there's absolutely no barrier to great talent. So Paul is now in place, and that allows me to have a little bit more time to be able to understand where MadeBrave is going to go next. I also promoted my creative director to executive creative director, and hired another 2 fantastic creative directors from London who want to work in an amazing Scottish business as well. And then as well as that, I've got a whole bunch of great leaders that I've empowered to do every part of the business way better than me. I'm actually quite worried now that if I don't have MadeBrave, that I won't know what to do, because I don't know how to do anything. But as well as great leaders, if any of you guys are at the beginning of your business journey, you also need great advisors. And they're readily available to us now as well because of the pandemic. So, Philip here was the business director or client team director at WPP. Jenny Plant, ex-general manager of Publicis Life Brands. And these guys want to sit on my board now and help MadeBrave get to the next level. And they'll get me way more advanced than I could ever do on my own. And we're adding a new advisor from Delhi, a guy called Gotham, that I'll putting out in the press this week. And that's because if I'm going to have a global business, which we really need to have ambition in Scotland. We've got great people here. We don't need to be afraid and go out to speak to people all over the world and bring all that knowledge in. So a few takeaways is that you gain way more giving things away and giving control away than you ever do trying to hold on to it yourself. Not taking risks is the biggest risk of all. So if you're thinking about something, go do it. I'm your kickstart today to give you permission. And lead, don't follow. This world belongs to the brave, so do the brave thing if you can put yourself out there. But remember and share what you learn. So I'm always keen to do this, and I'm always keen to share. And if you want to come up and ask me anything after the fact today, I'll share anything I've done right or wrong, because I believe it comes back tenfold. And ultimately, when we have brands in our business, it's sometimes easy to create these things, put them on a PDF, put them in a drawer. But when times are hard, it's really when you lean into these things, lean into your purpose and lean into your values. And yeah, hopefully the future can be a brighter one for us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. There is going to be an opportunity at the end of this, as ever, when all 3 speakers have spoken, to ask questions. But there's one I want to put into Andrew just now. It sounds fabulous. It sounds absolutely fantastic. Great place to work, lovely people, lots of energy, lots of enthusiasm. What do you do, as inevitably must happen, when you get somebody who just simply doesn't fit?
Yeah, well, that happens sometimes, but I think that's why we create brands. Like, brands are there not only to attract people, but they're also there to repel people as well. Mm-hmm. So the more that you put out into the world, what you believe in, right? I always say it's better to have 100 people that love your brand than 1,000 people that like it. And I think most brands in today's world will generally have a stance. And so you're trying to, as early as possible, reject those people from your business so that they don't get in the door because they actually go, I don't think I would like that place. Because that's not for everyone. You know, some people look at that and they'll think, oh my God, you know, like there's too much going on there. That's okay. It just means they're not right for MadeBrave. So, yeah, sometimes it happens, but I think it's trying to set it off before it happens is what we try and do.
And are you, I mean, here's a leading question, are you a relaxing person to work with?
I don't know, you need to ask my team that.
I don't think I do need to ask you.
I think they probably go, oh no, here he is. Yeah, so I'll let you make your mind up on that one.
Well, exactly. That's it. Chance to ask questions later. Next speaker is Myra Fulton, Senior Director of Engineering at Skyscanner. And again, this builds on what Andrew's just been talking about. It's the lessons that we can learn from pre-COVID. So, Myra, over to you.
I'm not quite sure whether to respond after a creative person's rights. My slides are nowhere close as good as Andrew's were. I'm just going to put that out there first. You're getting a very engineering take here. So it is, as Andrew said, it's amazing to be here, see people in person. I've just met somebody that I used to work with 2.5 years ago. Probably worked about 9 years, probably, in total. So it's lovely to see people, and it's great to have people online, because I think this is the future, right? We have come so far through COVID, and if we were standing here in 2019, and I was to say to you, 2022, we're going to be talking about hybrid, we're going to be talking about remote working, 3 days at home, you'd be like, yeah, you're living on a different planet, it's never going to happen, we're never going to be able to make that move. COVID gave us that. COVID gave us a lot of real big challenges, massive impacts to everybody's life. But from a work perspective and how we think about where we need to be to deliver our key objectives and our outcomes to the business, all of our norms have been just taken away from us. We had to go very quickly into remote work, and we actually started to see what worked and what didn't. So what I'm here to do today is just talk to you a little bit about our Skyscanner journey. So for those who don't know, Skyscanner is born again, very similar to Andrew. We were born in Edinburgh. We have, I need to remember, like 7 offices around the world, and probably about 4 different time zones that we work in. We've currently got about 1,100 members of staff across a multitude of different disciplines. So what I want to do today is just talk you through our journey. Is a bit of looking back. I am going to apologise because I'm quite sure we don't want to think back to March 2020, but it is a really pivotal point for us in our journey. So I want to talk to you about where we started, the lessons that we learned throughout it, and probably very similar to Andrew, just what does that really mean for us going forward. So where did we start? Skyscanner was always a company, very kind of similar to what Andrew talked about, is being people first. We were very much, people was the core of our culture and what people wanted. So we were a very flexible company, even pre-COVID. Our main policy was that you're in the office more than you're not, which in practicality terms meant most people work from home, at least maybe 1 day a week, some people 2 days a week. So we had that flexibility. We had multiple locations in the world. So actually we were quite built for flexibility. Every meeting included a Zoom link. We would do town halls in the morning to catch our APAC teams. We would do in the afternoons to catch our America teams. So we were quite kind of flexible in all our approaches. So we were very much in that space, and I think really kind of proud to work for a company that really put people first and that flexibility right front and centre. So obviously 2020 appeared and we all were kind of forced to work from home, but obviously we're a flexible company, right? We've got Zoom links there, all our equipment, you could lift and work anywhere in the world, so you could access any systems. We'd be all right, it's just that we put everybody in their bedroom or at home. How wrong we were. Because again, I think one of the most important things that I saw, I think it was a Twitter post that was, we're not just working from home, but we're trying to work at home during a pandemic. And I think definitely for me, kind of similar, the world's changed in March 2020. Your home was no longer that place that you would go home to relax, to be with your family. It became everything. So it became where you would eat, where you would sleep, where you'd relax. It became your gym, it became your office, meditation space, anything at all. All our freedoms, all our opportunities had been taken away. All that social interaction had been removed in an absolute split second. And from a business point of view, in travel, as you can imagine, everything falls to the floor. Every flight is grounded. Every time you open social media, every time you open the news, it's constantly talking about I think it was EasyJet are down 90%. Everything was grounded. We were in a business that was definitely in a tough time. So we started to identify just some of the key challenges, and what I'm probably going to say is, this is going to sound really obvious, but at the time it was like, we should have known this. So your home is not the same as your office. We basically lifted and shifted all our practices, and we were just like, oh, we'll be fine, we're all good. We started then to identify people were sitting at their desk for 8-9 hours a time, constantly, no interaction with people. You stopped a Zoom call, and you went straight on to another one. Yes, our diaries were quite back-to-back in the office, but you'll see and interact with different people as you move about the office, as you maybe grab a coffee, but you didn't have that at home. People were really, really struggling. That limited connection, we had some new people who had literally just started the business, who didn't know anybody, so didn't know anybody to go and have that conversation with, as well as a lot of fear and anxiety. A pandemic was happening around the world, and one that really, really impacted our business. So I'm kind of proud to say we identified that really, really quickly. And one of the first things that we did with our team was we introduced something called Your Choice Time. And basically what it meant was every afternoon, we blocked out 3 hours in every single person in the business's diary, and that was time for them. Now, that could have been time for focused work to do, could also have been time to look after their family. It was really about their mental health, their well-being, what was right for them during this time. And throughout the pandemic, we have evolved that, and one of the key things we've identified is that focused time. We love to be with people, but we also need to have that block of time that we can just really concentrate and do some really, really deep thinking. Probably very similar to most of you, we added in some regular check-ins for people, just that check-in in the morning and afternoon. Is everybody okay? Has somebody got somebody to talk to? As well as many online group socials. I'm quite sure we all can remember the many, many Zoom quizzes that we had right at the start. I think I spoke to more of my friends within a month at the start of the pandemic than I would normally have done in a year. So when we did start to think about what's our future ways of working, I think in every press article with the big massive drive to remote working, I think we all thought at the start, 4 weeks we'll be fine and we'll be back in the office. We have a team in China, they went home 3 weeks before us, and we're back in the office really, really quickly. Obviously for us, we've been out of the office now just until March this year. We did open our offices when it was safe to do so for anybody who didn't have space or safe space to work. But really from our opening and coming back, it was March this year. So really pretty much 2 years, close enough to the date, we were all at home. So when we did start to think about our future of working, it's a little bit like this. Loads of different roads, lots of different articles, depending on what you read, what you want to believe in. Everybody has their own opinion. And it's a little bit, you'll see all extremes of I want to be completely remote, I want to be back in the office. Every variation is in there. So what we wanted to do is we had learned lessons from our past of what was pre-COVID like, what worked and what didn't work. We had our lessons for working remotely, what worked and what didn't work. So we wanted to take that same approach with their team and go, okay, what would this look like as we come back in? Is it this back into the office? Do we just keep going with where we are? Or do we do something slightly different? What would that need to really, really look at? So we went out and we asked our team. And the key thing, kind of again, similar to Andrew, is about that kind of values. What did we value? So interestingly enough, our team valued weekly connections. We asked frequency, how people wanted to come in. People wanted to connect weekly. We are a very social team. We are a very people-focused, centric team. People want to be together. But they potentially didn't want to be together as frequently as they were before. Home was really where people found focused time and that opportunity to work there. And then we value our time far more than we did before. We don't want to commute unless we've got a purpose to commute and we're actually going to see somebody. So we want to do things with key purpose. Personal flexibility was really, really strong when we talked to the teams, but with the understanding we have to balance that, and we work in squads, tribes, so we have to balance that with our squads and our tribe. We were in a business that really was in recovery. We had to really work really, really hard. But we don't just want to recover, we absolutely want to thrive out the back of COVID. So where did we land? We landed on that we connect regularly in person with our teams and colleagues while having the flexibility to work in the right environment to deliver our best work. And with that, there's a bit of an expectation. People will be in the office weekly with those you collaborate with. Obviously, as everybody, there's personal circumstances, things will change, locations of where people are based. But we are really about connecting and being social and being together. Very kind of high, kind of very, very high level. So we also wanted to give people a bit of guiding principles as we're thinking about, well, what does regularly really mean? Where do we go about? We set out a number of guiding principles. We're a very principle-led organisation, and just to help people understand the key points. So we did fundamentally believe in a really strong piece that when people do meet in regular in person, we're better able to innovate, collaborate and inspire. I've literally just come from a 2-day off-site, on-site, where we've actually been able to solve problems today that's taken us 6 months on Zoom calls to try and do. When you look somebody in the eyes, it's so much easier to have that space. It's not always for the right time, but some of those things just really make that difference when you see somebody face to face. Personal connections are really where you can start to build trust. It's really hard to build trust with people you've never met and just hope they're going to do what you're asking them to do or work with you in a particular project. So really starting to build that trust and having those impersonal connections. We want to make sure we deliver on our commitments to our team and to Skyscanner. We all succeed. We either lose or we win as a team. So it's really important that we're there for each other. We have the flexibility to deliver on our promises. We want to continue that learning, evolution and adaptation, and we want to create that inclusive environment. As you go into a hybrid space, one of the big positives we had of 100% remote was everybody was equal. Everybody was a little square on that Zoom call. When you become into hybrid space, it's very, very different, so you've got to be really, really careful. We wanted to make sure we did this for our teams and keep that as really strong flexibility. I will come with a word of caution. Great flexibility comes great responsibility. We found this when we were pre-COVID. We would have people that would just decide the days they were going to be in the office, the days they weren't. So you would potentially travel to meet somebody in person and they happen to be in home. So actually, when you then reduce the number of days that you're going to be in a space, you need to plan that. You need to be able to coordinate when you're going to meet with people, have those kind of flexibilities. But we didn't want to dictate days to our teams. That was really about our teams working that through with them. What's the right thing to do? We're all individual. We've all got our own personal circumstances to deal with. But how do we deliver that for the business? So what we did is we didn't want to kind of leave everybody on their own. There was a lot of people there trying to work through these problems, and we're getting asked lots of questions of what could it look like? What does it really mean? But one of the things we really identified is our offices were really, really important to us. This is our Glasgow office. This is my home office. And our offices are really, really important to us. These floor tiles are the one thing that identifies our teams. They're in they're in all of our offices. And it's the one thing that ties everybody together. It may sound really silly. Those colours are what defines us as a team within the offices. So they were really kind of a cornerstone for us as a business. So not having them during COVID was a really big impact. So we wanted to change that feeling of an office. So pre-COVID, you had your own desk, you had your own space, you were there for, as I said, 4 to 5 days a week. We wanted to change that perception of our office. Our office was no longer going to be a quiet space. It's a space we want to create noise, we want to create energy, and even when there's not a lot of people in it, there is an energy in the Skyscanner offices that you just can't quite explain. It's quite powerful. So we then decided to redefine them. So we talked about our offices being that kind of cultural hub, that space where you are going to come together and connect with people, really about that innovation, that collaboration. So we want to make sure we really capitalise when you are together. You're going to go, if you're sitting on the train, if you're on your bike, or you're walking back home, you go, that commute was absolutely worthwhile doing. So we changed our offices. I just thought I'd show a couple of pictures. For anybody that works with engineers, coffee is super important. It's the most important thing we have in our office. Food also becomes very, very important. So we've brought a lot of food back into the offices. And we've removed a number of desks and created a lot more kind of small collaboration spaces and more kind of flexibility around our desks. One of the things that is really important for us is just around, we have an internal tool called Flight Deck. And before COVID, that was really a tool that if you were in any office, you could type in anybody's name and see where their desk was, which was really great because if you hadn't met somebody, you could go find their desk and go speak to them. So changing, you now no longer have a desk. What we now do is do a desk booking system, and we've adapted it. So all the desks are free. We have desks that are set up for our designers. We've got normal desks. We've got desks that have more privacy. We have our desks. We've still got some masks in our offices for people who want to feel safe, or prefer to wear a mask, I should say. Our offices are safe. So we just add this all to Flight Deck. People can go in and book, and I know it's great. I go in and say, who have I not seen for a while? I'm going to go book a desk in beside them. We did a lot more in the helping of people, because people, again, having not been in an office, potentially people that had never been in our offices, we doubled down in lots of kind of help and started to do things like breakfasts pretty much every day for our team. So we have created our office as a social hub and really home for that kind of focused work. So what we did there is we obviously understood people were going to be home, so we introduced a home office allowance and really helped people create that safe working environment for them in their house of whatever they needed to do. We also understood that there was a number of people that potentially just don't have the space to work at home. So we ensure that we've got a space for every single person of our team to allow them to work if they want to be in the office 5 days a week as well, because that was really important. We provide a safe space for our team. So that's great, we've defined where our offices are. What does it actually mean? What does it mean practically? Because that's what our teams were really keen to understand. So we actually ran over 100 workshops with every single squad in our team. We did it at some discipline level, just depending on the size of the teams. And we really wanted people to think about where was the best space for them and their team to deliver on that work. So where was the right thing to do their particular kind of engineering scrum ceremonies? Where was the right place? Where did you want to come together? And every team was very, very different of what they valued and where they wanted to be. Some teams decided they wanted to have one day that they were all together and it was all just going to be about being in the same room. Others decided they wanted to have 2 days split across, and they would definitely vary that. So probably just to bring it to life a little bit, we've got one team that we've got 6 people in it. 3 people like to be in the office every single day. 3 people much prefer to be remote. So they've come to an agreement of the day that they're all going to be together. What are the key activities that they're going to do when they're together? But when they're all remote, when they're all apart, they've got their own ways of working. They've got their check-ins, they've got open Zoom calls all day that people can just drop in and keep that inclusive environment, being very, very respectful for other people's commitments. All sounds great, yeah? We started this officially in March. We were hoping to do January. Omicron obviously came along and stopped us. So we opened our offices in March, which was great. It was great to see people. I would say it's definitely taken time. So it's not all been plain sailing. What I would say to people is to really acknowledge this is a change for people. This is a new habit that we have to create. If I take you back to March, everybody working remotely, it was very different for people. Some people were completely against wanting to be at home all the time and have become completely, they want to be remote 100%. People are on a journey. I kind of relate it back when I talk about it is like going back to the gym. Back to the gym, you've done that set of squats, lunges, you feel that for a number of days straight after it. That is about coming back and working out the right ways of working. We haven't got it right. We're going to continually iterate and learn. And even teams that thought they had it all worked out pre-starting, it's not working. So they are adapting and they're changing, and we're giving them that flexibility and empowering them to make those changes. What we've also identified is because we're in so many different locations, there might be somebody that's maybe only one person in a team in an office. How do we connect them with their wider tribe, with their wider office, their wider discipline? So we're starting to think of what are the right interactions to have there, bring back our meetups, our hackathons, all of those things to really help just build those connections, because it's not just about the work that you do every day, it's about those relationships that you build and that sense of belonging. So if I kind of round up on a couple of things for me, it's really about defining what your future work is for people, because people are anxious about all of this because they don't fully understand it. So be really clear and be really proud of who you are as an organisation. You hear about the Great Resignation. Their people are looking for different things. We have learned so much about ourselves over the last 2 years and what's really important and what we value. And it's all about your proposition out to those people. So be really clear on what you want. Set people up for success. Define your spaces so people know what to do in them, because they are very different now as well. Test, learn and iterate. You're never going to get it right first time. Just be open to that. Hybrid working does take planning and organisation. It's not just going to happen organically. You're going to have to think about it. Give your teams time to adjust. Talk to them, understand what's working, understand what's not, and continue to grow with them. And really help them on the journey. But also remember you're on that journey as well, and be kind to yourself. Because again, just like we started with COVID, especially as leaders, we talked about handing out life jackets to people. You've got to make sure that you're safe and that you're in this position that you can hand out that life jacket when you need to your team. And hopefully if I get to come back next year, I'll tell you it's all different and we'll have changed everything else. So thank you very much.
Our last speaker today is Gerrie Hawes, Corporate Behavioural Psychologist for a company called Remotely Human. I'm not sure what she's going to be talking about. I asked her this morning, she said future leadership skills, but I heard Myra ask her exactly the same question. She said bad leadership, so it'll be somewhere in between those 2 points. Off you go.
Okay. Hello and welcome wherever you are. Some of you are still in your bedrooms, I'm sure. So it's great to see you there. Apparently I'm the slot between you getting your beer. So I've got a timer on here, and Mark will give me a prod if I need to move on. Now, for my session, for my talk, you're going to need a few things. You're going to need your fingers and your thumbs, and you might need your phone. We're going to try a bit of Slido action to work wherever you are, from home as well. And we're going to see, it's a digital leaders conference, so it's bound to go wrong, the tech, isn't it? So we'll see if it works. We'll have a go. My name's Gerrie. I'm a corporate behavioural psychologist. There's 3 words I didn't know that I'd ever put together when I was at school. And I'm fascinated by the future of work, and specifically the future of leadership. Now, as a behavioural psychologist, I often get asked, are you analysing me? And I can tell you a few things about yourself that you possibly know. By looking at this title, I think you fall into one of 4 camps. Because my talk is very much about you, your favourite subject. Well, some of you look at Web3, and I think you're in the minority here. Sometimes a lot of my audience are in this place. You think of Web3 and you don't know what on earth I'm talking about. Well, it's probably fair not to know because it's changing and it's still just emerging. And it doesn't matter. For this next 20 minutes, just know that there's this thing called Web3. I'll explain a bit more as we go. Some of you, I've hit the button and going, it's a Ponzi scheme. I haven't even mentioned the metaverse and NFTs yet, but I can see one of you going, yeah, that's the space. If you're feeling in that way, and you don't want to listen, then I do recommend looking on Wiki for Charles Ponzi's life. It's amazing. Let's do a film together. Right. So some of you are already bored, right? Web3, yeah, whatever. I'm not interested in it at all. My talk is about leadership skills. We'll get onto that quite quickly. And then there's a bunch of you that are all over NFTs, metaverse, like a rash, and I can guarantee you know more than I do. And again, it doesn't matter. I'm going to focus on one aspect of this right now. So this is a big if. We should always have a big if, right? And there's a big if. By talking about the future of work and the future of leadership and Web3, nobody knows what it is. So I can say whatever I like, right? But in this case, I would like to use something that has been rattling around LinkedIn for a while. And that is, if Web 2.0 equals team plus mission, then Web 3 equals community and movement. Well, what does that mean? Well, if you look at most of your websites, I think you'll find that you have a tab that relates to something to do with team. That sounds familiar, right? And another one that will have something about your purpose and your values, and that's very much current, and we are very much in a Web 2 world now, most of us anyway. But there's something interesting going on here. There is something happening that seems to be emerging about community and movement. People outside structured organisations are connecting, they're mobilising, and they're organising themselves, and it's not in the way that we've known it. Now, some of us will say, well, this tech breakthrough is all to do with the COVID effect. But I've been observing something along these lines for a number of years now, and I actually think it's more to do with the growth of the gig economy. People that are not connected to an organisation, but actually they want to connect and mobilise. And we had a bit of discussion about that earlier, about, well, what about insurance? And there's so many opportunities being explored about how people in the gig economy can get the benefits without having to be connected to a large organisation. But there is a thing emerging that may be familiar to a number of you, which is this little acronym, DAOs. See if anybody's ever heard of them. There's a few people nodding. Even the people that don't think it's a Ponzi scheme have heard of this. Well, DAOs stand for Decentralized Autonomous Organizations. And they've actually really kind of emerged from people having NFT collections. They've found that there's a tribe, a collection of people that think along the same way, and they are finding they have a common interest. Increasingly, this has also been about revenue or entrepreneurship. Some are hedonistic, some are entrepreneurial, and some may be cause-related. Now, I've coined this phrase chose because we've been educated, we've had our early stage of the career, and most people that I come across work for centralised hierarchical organisations. And I believe that both will exist in the future of leadership because there are benefits from centralised hierarchical organisations that you don't get from being in a decentralised autonomous organisations. There are things like succession planning and opportunity, perceived security. That's controversial because people think that a large organisation is going to be there forever. Well, we all know some examples that that's not the case. But there is something very interesting about the purest understanding of what a DAO is about. I have some discussion at that, but I'm not going to explore it further. But what people say about DAOs is there are no leaders. So we might as well go to the pub now, right? You're all digital leaders and the future has no leaders. Well, there is some things going on here, and we should ask, well, why are DAOs emerging in the first place? So these are taken from Elon Musk's new toy, Twitter. They are verbatim comments of people saying why they have decided to leave and join, leave whatever that thing is, maybe it's an isolation or a large or a chow, a centralized organization. Why have they joined the DAO? Well, I'll read just a couple of them, but I worked in a place full of fearful, undervalued, disengaged workers. So on that side, you've got the negative reasons that they left. And on the right-hand side, what they've discovered. I now work in the most efficient, productive, and expansive, playful space. Web3 raises the standard. It's full of people making a living and doing what they love. And that is so rare. So what's happening here? Well, something's happening here, and I blame these. Oh, that's you, right? So you're digital leaders. Well, maybe not all leaders. There is a particular type of leader that is causing and is driving this shift away from centralized organizations, and that are hopeless leaders. Have you ever met a hopeless leader? Well, actually, it's probably time for me to ask to get your fingers and thumbs out. But before we do that, let's ask about the telltale signs of hopeless leaders. Again, from social media, these are phrases that people have been saying. How do you know you've got a hopeless leader? And again, you might recognize a few of these. My boss is exhausted, burnt out, and run ragged. My one-to-ones are constantly bumped. I'm under constant pressure to do my stuff, but the overall project is flawed. It's a waste of my time and their money. They're headless chickens. Agile comes to mind here. Another ticket, another task, another transaction. And they don't care what I think, what I feel. In fact, I'm not even convinced they know what I do. So are you a hopeless leader? Right, okay. Let's do it an easy way first of all. Unless your boss is sat next to you, because this would be career limiting, I want to know, are they great or are they a hopeless leader? Somewhere in between. Want to get your thumbs out? Tell me where you... all right, so you recognise some hopeless leaders there, right? Okay, right, now for yourself. Are you a hopeless leader? Uncertainty. Well, I have some ways to find out, because I have some structure to help you think about it. So, I was asked to come up with a tool, something that you could use. And I thought, well, we need a tool that you can carry with you most of the time, something you keep in your pocket. So your hand is very handy on this. And so this is a tool that you'll carry with you at all times whenever you find yourself with your hand in your pocket, you're walking along somewhere, walking to the next meeting, or walking from your bedroom to your bathroom, wherever you're working, and go, okay, I'm going to see how I'm doing on my hopelessness. At your knuckle, right down to the knuckle is 0. You're not doing very well at all. And your tippy tops is your top, your 10 score. So you can do this at any time, and you can have your scale, and I'll talk through each of these measures. I'm also going to invite you to, because you love data, right? So I'm going to also invite you to get involved in Slido as well on these. So the first one I want to talk to you about, well, actually, let me go back. I also call these core skills. Just want to, before I move to far, sometimes these are called soft skills, but believe me, these are the hardest leadership skills. And so I don't like to call them soft. I call them core skills. Maybe they should be called hard skills. I don't know. So my first question for you is, how happy are you? Now, notice I'm not talking about your team. I'm talking about you. It starts with how you are doing. Now, by happy, I don't mean all jazz hands. I am actually talking about contentment. I'm talking about your well-being, your fitness, your mental fitness, and your self-care. Where are you going to score yourself on that? So what is your number on that? Score yourself. Are you eating well? Are you sleeping well? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you caring for your most precious asset? That's you, right? And are you role modeling this for your team? So are they seeing, actually, I have a healthy, happy leader, and they're role modeling. This is what's expected when you work in this place. Are you more than making do? Are you enjoying yourself? Are you happy? Well, if it allows me, you can get your phones out and you can give me a little snapshot of how you're feeling. So I'm sure you're familiar with Slido, but if you're not, then the QR code will jump you to this question and the 1 to 10, or you can go to slido.com and put that code in. So how happy are you? And we have to start shaking off this idea that if I work hard enough, I will be happy. In fact, there is lots of scientific evidence that you're more likely to be successful if you are happy. Now, again, I'm respecting that you like data, and the reason I have notes here because I have numbers to give you. Maybe you're finding the idea of happiness too soft, but Sean Aker, recommending rereading his book, The Happiness Advantage, at Harvard University, identified that happy doctors make 19% faster decisions and 12% more accurate diagnosis than their unhappy counterparts. A 2006 study showed that happy sales negotiators are much more likely to close the deal. And if you are happy, you're 31% more productive and 37% better at sales. Now, you may not be a salesperson, but if you're selling ideas to your people, to your colleagues, or to your customers, then you're more likely to be successful if you're happy. So let's see how you're feeling. Okay, so we've got some nice 8s, 9s, and 10s, but we have to respect that right down the bottom there is 2, 3, 4, those numbers, there's still some people feeling that way, and fair enough, right? This is just a measure. The next stage is to notice what's going on with you, and it's time to start taking action. Next question. Do you share your optimistic, achievable project vision? When we get stuck in data and detail, we forget to share the slider should be working, I'll move to it actually. We forget to share our vision. Now, the problem with that is that people don't understand how they fit in, or what their role, or how they add value to the project. If you don't give people a clear view, they end up not knowing what they're doing. Let's put it another way. If you don't know where you're going, all roads lead to get. Also, if you don't know where you're going, all roads will get you there. And your people will feel the same. They will go off and they won't know what they're doing. If you have a clear direction, a clear vision, and it's achievable but optimistic, and they understand why they want to get there, and even how you'll celebrate when you do, then they'll tell you when they're going out, when they're going off kilter, when they're going to another place. Now, that drives me back to that Web3 formula that I showed you. If you can have a great vision that people want to go to, and they're involved in creating it and by stepping into it, you will start to create a movement. So score yourself. How are you doing? Okay. Do you even have a vision? Is it optimistic? Is it achievable? Do you believe it? And have you shared it? And do people talk about it? Do they know that how they fit into it? Okay, just note where you are as well. Thank you very much. Right, the next one is your team playful. Hang on, you're a serious business, right? I know you're a serious business, so surely we should be talking about collaboration, maybe innovation, perhaps creativity. Well, yeah, all of those, but I want to talk to you about a step further than that. Future leaders need to stretch beyond those. A playful team plays with ideas, they laugh, they explore, and they wonder, what if? Let's build on the ideas, let's wonder if, let's escape let's They explore failure as because when you play, things do fail and then you laugh and you build up on it. They have fun. And fun, according to Ben Fincham at Sussex University, is the #1 driver of creating community, the other part of the Web3 formula. If your team is having fun together, you will create a sense of belonging and a sense of community. Compare playfulness with DAOs. DAOs have a playful maverick right now. They have a bit of a naughty edge. They can be really irritating, but if you belong, you feel like you're part of it. They cut through a lot of crap. Much has been made of productivity during lockdown, but without playfulness, you risk being the company that breeds the finest horses and builds more and more carts, whilst the playful team are going, wouldn't it be hilarious to get rid of horses, strap an engine on it, and what happens if we didn't have drivers either? Score yourself. How are you doing on playfulness? Give you a moment on that. Okay. I love it when it jumps up and down because you go, oh, oh. Great. So you've started to consider your own contentment, your happiness, your well-being, your health, and you've considered team cohesion because they're excited about where the project's going, why it's worth their effort. You might even have created a movement and they're having fun. You've got a real sense of community and they're delivering innovative productive solutions. So here's your final stretch, your final question on this. Are you empathetic? Now, I'm talking about cognitive empathy here with your employees and with your team. That's a good start. That's your first bit of the score. But what about with your peers? What about with your leaders, empathetic of what's going on for them? What about your customers? Are you empathetic with your suppliers? Now, what I'm asking is, do you try to imagine or even find out what's going on with these people, how they're feeling, and what they're experiencing? And why? Why do you need to do this? Well, empathy with your employees leads to higher retention and higher attraction rates. Now, in the tech industry, I know there's a shortage of people. I know there's a shortage of people with the talent. It's a big problem. Empathetic leaders are more likely to retain, but they're also more likely to get referrals from people saying, come and work with this boss, they're great. Decision-making and conflict solution is also much more effective with an empathetic leader. Google's Project Aristotle, you might have come across, identified that empathetic people are much more likely to pick up on non-verbal cues, and they're much more likely to pick up and nip problems in the bud. It's much more efficient for you and much less likely to get to crisis point. This is your final part of your judging and Slido. And productivity also is benefits when you have high empathy in organisation. Researchers found that we all work harder when we know who the work is going to benefit. Radiologists, for example, interpret scans with much greater detail when there's a photograph of the patient included in the files. Chefs make tastier food when they can see the people they're cooking for. So if you go to a restaurant with the open kitchen, you're in for a treat. And finally, ethics. The best way to create an ethical organisation is to up the empathy. The US Management Research Group found that empathy was the single strongest predictor of ethical leadership. We all make fairer, better, and better long-term decisions when we care. Have you voted? Right, I've only just split up, that's why it should all come up as I click. Are you empathetic? Cool. So they're the joint scores, but it's only your scores that really matter. You have this handy toolkit with you to carry with you all the time. And what do you notice? If you're scoring 9 on one thing, there's still 10. If you're scoring 6 on another, what can you do on there? And you can keep yourself going and measuring and seeing how you're achieving. And it changes. It changes in how you're feeling and how the team is going. Of course, measurement is only the fingertips of the iceberg, and we have to work together to take action. And there are lots of different ways, workshops and programs that will help you do that. I'm happy to talk to you about it. In fact, I'd love to talk about it in Q&A or come and find me afterwards. But decide which one of these you're going to focus on. Happy, optimistic, playful, and empathetic. Of course, you can work on 4, but they spell out a simple word: happiness, optimism, playfulness, and empathy. Hope. My talk was how not to be a hopeless leader. Thank you for your time.
We're just having a discussion about this, that this might actually be nationally biased, because it's very difficult for Scots to vote 10 for anything. No, I don't know. Am I 10? No.
If there is a
Maybe
spinal tap response as well. If you were 10 on everything, go for 11, right? Dial
Just check it up one more. Any questions? We've got microphones in the hall again, but any questions for any of the 3 speakers? Here's a bit joke. Hang on a minute. Oh, fair enough. Let's deal with those. Yeah, here's a good one. How do you deal with hopeless leaders at the very top of the chain and you're not allowed to put assassination as an answer?
Well, how do you deal with hopeless leaders at the very top? Well, we know that they cause lots of problems and people will be leaving. So they will know, if they don't know, then show them your retention figures, because your retention will be a problem. You'll be losing people and you won't be attracting people. So give them the data, I'd suggest.
What if they then turn around, however, and say, actually, that's because they can't live up to my standards? They're not good enough. That's why they're leaving.
Yeah, well, I think on the long term, the organisation will be flawed, right? So, so although you're pushing constantly on the results, you have to connect with them with numbers, right? Give them numbers back to them. Show them the data, show them reactions, show them... Pulse figures might not work for those people, right? But if you start giving the hard data on how it's not delivering, how we're losing money on, how we're not attracting the best people, and how we're actually losing the best people, because you will be, because the best people can easily move to another place, then you start to hit the bottom line. And that will hurt those people.
Andrew, do you want to have a bash at that too? How do you deal with hopeless leaders?
I think that's a great answer.
Fine. Myra?
No, I think it's difficult, I think, from a leader if they don't see it. I think that's the hardest part. And I think it's about, I think the retention space is really interesting. I think it's the purpose. I think as well, I think a hopeless leader's not very good at a purpose. If that purpose isn't very clear, I think it does depend on the individual, how you target it, and the information that works best for them.
Yeah, well, if you thought that was a tough question, wait till you get this one.
What's the next one?
That's the next one. I hope you brought your sleeping bags, children. Any ideas of how you can measure happiness? You ducked the last one. You're not getting away with it this time. On you go.
How can you I don't feel qualified to how you measure happiness. I think you can often feel it though in your culture, and yeah, I think you can sense when you have more people leaving than joining, or. But I think, I think with any culture, it's kind of about a balance of many things, and it's not always easy. So I think it's important if you're a leader. If you are in that place of leading, to let people know you don't have all the answers. That's the way I've always tried to lead, anyway.
What I try to do is break it down into its parts, because then you can score yourself on elements. Are you exercising? Are you caring your well-being? There's some great models around. Action for Happiness have done a lot of work on happiness. There's Mind has done some work as well. There's some tools that you can access, but it is a deeper conversation. If I've piqued your interest, then whoever they've sent in, if they piqued your interest, then contact me and we'll talk further about it.
Okay. Myra, any thoughts?
No, I think that's really great. I think it's breaking it down to the point. We did do something quite... Yeah, we wanted to see how happy our team was in the office. So at the lifts, where everybody had to kind of go out, we put a little box and it had just a happy face and a sad face, a little bit like as you go through security. And it was really interesting. We could tell the days that air conditioning didn't work.
Yeah.
And people were not happy.
Yeah.
Or the food wasn't good, people weren't happy. So that was quite an interesting indicator, because somebody said to me, oh, it's not going to tell you anything because you don't know why, because there's obviously so much context in behind it. But it was quite interesting to watch the patterns of just what was important for people in the space that they were in. just as a little, that was a bit of fun.
Okay. Anything from the floor? Yes, gentleman there. Pete's just coming up behind you.
Thanks. That was 3 really good presentations, so thanks very much for those. There's been a bit of talk throughout the previous sessions about the sort of convergence of people, process and technology, and I think, you know, those terms will be familiar to most in the room. You focus quite a lot on people from the DAO perspective. From a process and technology perspective, how do you see that changing as businesses begin to adopt some of the sort of DAO mindset, I guess?
What I'm seeing in DAOs is that they are such early stage. And I was involved in a pre-DAO, right? So I was involved in a completely flat collective. It was called a collective of people that work in the gig economy of similar talents, but different talents, so you could give business to each other. What was very interesting with it, and I don't think this quite answers your question, but what I think is very interesting in it is that until we educate ourselves that we don't have to have a leader, then people still looked for the leaders. And if you are involved in any of the discords, for example, that have a lot of DAO creations going on, there's still people driving it. It's not flat. And so I think it's interesting, and some of them are successful, but that's why I think both are going to survive. Actually, we want somebody to make the decision so that we can get on with the job at times. We also want the progression, and we also want somebody to set out what are we trying to achieve? Let's come and join us. So the technology, it's really early stage. I mean, what is Web3 is a fair question. And we don't know. It's a bit like asking what is the internet in the end of the last century. But it's there, and I don't think it's going away, this idea of reorganizing how we work together. There will be other options than the ones we recognize. Does that sort of answer your question-ish?
Sorry, question there, Pete.
Hi there, I'm sorry, Duncan Hart from a little company called Deep Miner. The DAO is a really interesting thing. Do you think it's more prevalent in certain industries? So you have the gig economy is growing, but then you have some parts of the gig economy wanting to have holiday and wanting to have, we've seen all the travails of Uber, which is, started off and saying, well, your gig, you can do whatever you want. Same with Deliveroo and people like that. Yes, I agree, if you're a software developer and you want to travel the world being a digital nomad, I create great pleasure. And over the pandemic, once I got over my initial total depression about the whole experience, it was lovely that I could do a phone call with somebody in front of a castle and I could say to them, look, I'm in front of a castle, it's snowing, it's wonderful. And everyone's going, oh, how amazing is that? I'm going, I know, digital nomad, check me out. But I think if you look at certain other economies or certain other businesses, models, which are going down that gig, is that potentially just an easier way for you as a company to just decentralize the responsibility for looking after people?
So, shall I answer that?
Yeah, you
Your expertise.
I'm happy to be corrected.
for advice.
So, I think there's something very interesting we should learn from the demand for DAOs, which is likely to grow, in that this idea of democratization of decision making. So, and it does. My brother lives in Switzerland, and democracy implies we all have a vote, and then half of us, a lot of us, more than half of us, choose not to vote, right? And it's what's interesting. We look at Switzerland; they have constant referendums, and so a DAO kind of works like that. You have to constantly be aware of this decision and how do you make it, and then if you start delegating it to somebody else, well, aren't they taking a leadership role? So. However, I think there's something interesting that the decision doesn't have to be made by the elite, the non-elected, or the board, whoever they are, the precious few that sit. I'm doing this because they're often on the top floor as well, right? So they're the top of the triangle, and they also have the best views of London. I was working with somebody yesterday. They have always the leadership always the best views, and the decisions are made up. So I would like to do this. I'd like to do this, and it goes to the top, and then you're told yes or no, and I think that needs to change. I think there needs to be much more of these are the projects that we've got, how do we vote into it? Do you do some of that? Well, you do that sort of equal egos. So an idea can come from everywhere. It's talked about, but there is still we're educated to respect the hierarchy. How mad is that, right? But we're educated to respect the leaders. And if you said, I think this is a great idea, people will jump more than other people.
Yeah, I think that naturally happens, but I think we try and encourage, you know, like my office manager, she comes into creative meetings, and you know, so you have people that aren't thought about as creative, naturally creative people, and we let people come in because sometimes they've got a point of view that we might just not have come to. And so, yeah, I think it's always funny as well, because you see businesses start and they say, we're going to, no hierarchy, we're going to have we're going to be totally different, we're, you know, disruptive, and we're changing everything. And then surely, you know, problems happen, and you go, shit, we better put someone in charge of that, and then all before you know it, you've got a hierarchy. And I found that the same in my business as it grew. We wanted no policies and nothing, and now I've got policies, you know, for everything, because you...
And schools work the same way, right? There's still a hierarchy in schools, so we're taught from a very young age to expect that there is a hierarchy.
Yeah.
And so we're not very good at going, well, what happens if there isn't one? So even if you try and make it flat, somebody's still going...
Absolutely.
And that's what we find. So we're a bit like that, exactly. We don't want to have the kind of big hierarchy, and exactly the same, like, could be our kind of junior or kind of our grads that come in with these amazing ideas, and actually some of our best product features have come from kind of grad ideas, etc. And we were very kind of autonomy. What then happens is you end up in so many spaces because everybody's got autonomy. It then creates more problems because actually you're trying to go fast and you're having to upgrade 5 things instead of only having to do 1. All of these things create problems. What we're now trying to make sure we do is just work out, well, what's the right level of accountability, responsibility. What we've also found is when we gave people accountability, responsibility to make decisions, they were like, can you just make the decision for me? So again, it's that journey of bringing people along with you in that kind of space and being clear what people can just go and do. So they don't have to come and ask for permission. And I love that, just beg for forgiveness. Just go for it.
You know, kind of kicking against centuries, basically, of social training, because society is set up in a certain way so that, you know, if we all follow these rules, then, you know, you will, you know, you'll have a certain degree of security, you have a certain degree, you know, you'll be fed, you'll have somewhere to stay, that kind of thing, you know, and, you know, we all know essentially where the boundaries are. You'll be able to walk out into the street without somebody murdering you, at least, you know, if they do, there will be consequences, that kind of thing. And all of a sudden you're saying, you know, and to be honest, I think the cat, as I said earlier, the cat's already out of the bag. Or everything we believed 2-3 years ago has been thrown into question, has been thrown into relief. And society is actually doing a bloody awful job so far of actually adapting to that fact. It's really struggling with that. I mean, what you were talking about this morning of saying, you know, best brands built from the inside out. I see large organizations taking elements of what you're doing and trying to bolt it onto the side and say, hey, we've got a street, you know, we're down there, and we just get together and we just jam ideas about and things like that. I've been in areas where, you know, people, there were terrible, terrible buildings, but people were very creative despite the buildings. As soon as you start trying to design for creativity, I think you take a lot of the zim out of it.
Yeah. Well, I actually forgot to say in my talk, I didn't really sum up what we'd changed, and I totally forgot when I was sitting down listening to you. I was like, I forgot to say that. That, you know, so we've gone out with this whole flexibility, which is, as you say, is completely polar opposite to what we've done for existence. And my point with the jelly thing was that, you know, we actually had a meeting today. So I've come from this week. We had a full immersion week where we asked our team to come in for the whole week. So we said, look, you've all been remote for the last however many years that pandemic went on. But we've now said we're going to put some rigidity back in because we've realised that the full flex completely just creates a little bit of chaos. And so we surveyed everyone as well. We did workshops, and they want some rigidity to so we've now got these quarterly immersion weeks. So we have, you know, everyone comes together at the end of that. During that week, there's all sorts of social events, and then a big social event at the end, because we had some people put their hands up and say, well, I'm way more productive at home. I'm doing 8 hours solid work. And I was actually like, well, I don't want you to do 8 hours solid work, because that's not going to create a great company, because you're not going to have any time in there to socialise. You're not going to get to know the people, and we're going to have no trust. So we need to find a balance for people like you and people who, you know, want the polar opposite. And then we've also said to our teams now, we're not mandating. I've heard a lot of companies starting to mandate in 2 or 3 days. I've said I'm going to encourage you to come in. We're going to keep 3 offices open. But we want you, if you're coming in, try coming in on a Tuesday, Wednesday, so that there's a kind of rhythm where we all come together. And you don't have to, if you've got something on, it's going to be better at home. go home and do your work, but let's try and come together. And that's our first step, because I think you do need a bit of structure, and human beings tend to like it to make us feel safe. Because it means lions aren't going to come and eat you, and you're going to have some food, etc., etc. So
The structure bit is what I mean about the optimistic vision, really, and because it gives you a place that you want to go to. So I think the way you describe your team is it's not a rigid box. It's like this is what we're going to. It's going to be great, and this is why I want to step into it. And then people can say, I don't really understand how that gets us here, and maybe it doesn't. I really worry about productivity. I know it's been celebrated, but I'm not convinced it's taking people in businesses in the right direction either. That just because you're productive doesn't mean you're producing the right thing.
Exactly.
And I think it's that. I think it is that you can work 8 hours a day, and I think that's a great question of, I don't actually want you to do that.
Yeah.
Is that really a good thing to do? And it's we will build it and they will come. And there was that kind of big craze of you had to have a table tennis table in your office. Just because you put a table tennis table in your office doesn't mean that's the culture you're going to build. It really does come from that inside out and looking after each other as people. But we need boundaries. That's why we've got principles and guardrails in place. And I think that's where it comes to that autonomy space. People get really scared because it's you want me to make the decision.
Yeah.
So there is always going to be that little bit of kind of leadership in that hierarchy. At the end of the day, the buck stops. It's got to stop somewhere. But it's how do you devolve that down? And how do you give people the right accountability that they feel comfortable with?
I mean, I knew people in the BBC who worked 14 hours a day. Not because it was productive, but because they didn't want to go home. It was as simple as that. And that's not being funny. That was an actual fact. But that became celebrated as something to aspire to. And you think, that's nuts.
Yeah.
Why would you bother doing that? Anything else from the floor? Right at the very back, please. You're too slow, Pete.
Hi, thanks. Bobby, Radically Digital. So just back to the DAO companies again for a second. So I understand when things are generally going well and it's exciting, you have that playfulness of being able to have that democracy around how decisions are made. There might not be that need for leaders per se, but how have you seen DAO-based companies responding where things aren't going well? Like the example Andrew gave when the pandemic struck and suddenly you have 350 to 50K in your pipeline. How do they normally respond as in that group setting as opposed to having a leader that people turn to?
Shall I carry on?
Yeah, and you go.
So I think this is where the Ponzi scheme response thing is part of it as well, because it is the Wild West. It's fascinating, and you have to go with your eyes open as well. So I think I encourage you to sort of dip some toes in, but don't put all your money in, is the way I'm going. In terms of what I mean, not even financially dip your toes, but have a good sniff around and see what's going on, because I think there's things we need to learn for any organisation in it. And there's this thing called rug pulls. If you've heard that, if you're in their world, there's loads of jargon, loads of laddie jargon, but there's loads of jargon in the Web3 world, of course. And there's this thing about rug pulls. So you might have invested a lot of time and energy and potentially money because you tend to have to buy into a DAO, and you may well lose. That's also sort of true. You commit to work, a business, a startup, or even a large organisation, and things don't go right, and pensions don't always happen. So I think there's always risk. Traditional businesses also have corruption, and they're just maybe more permitted to have the corruption. So I think it's such early stage that there's been a few, but there hasn't been many DAOs that have completely destroyed lives in the way that maybe a large financial organisation falling apart did in the last big financial crash. So what I'm encouraging you to do is just keep an eye on it and be aware that you may well lose people, like you lose people to startups, right? Mm-hmm. Conventional, hierarchical startups. Your best people are likely to go if your leadership is hopeless.
That might have been a message from God.
Yeah.
There was a chime telling me that time is up. Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask you to thank the last three speakers one more time, please? Thank you very much. Give me a couple of minutes of your time. I'd like to thank all the speakers today, please. They've been excellent. And thank you also to our conference partners and the exhibitors and the sponsors and everything else. The exhibition area is going to remain open until 4:30. If you haven't had a chance to meet the sponsors yet, please go and have a word with them. If you're here in person, and there's numbers point telling you otherwise, Digit will recycle those badges. I have a big bowl of them at home. It's completely pointless. There's a drinks reception in the Stratosphere as well. Stay enjoying that if you can. There's also a conference survey. Now, this is not just an exercise. Digit actually use this to sort of try and shape future events. So it doesn't matter whether it's positive or negative. If there's something that you feel strongly about, stick it in. It literally takes 2 or 3 minutes, but it's really useful to the Digit team. You know, it just allows them to sort of think about what they've been doing. This will be sent by email tomorrow, or it's accessible now on the virtual conference platform. Next 3 events, there's Martech on the 10th of May, Digit North on the 19th of May. First one's in Edinburgh, second one's in Aberdeen. Cloud First Summit on the 16th of June, Edinburgh. And those 2 last events are in-person events. You know, Martech is a hybrid event. From myself, Mark, Stephen, seriously, thank you very much. It is lovely to have actual warm bodies in front of you and actually get the reaction and to hear people and be able to speak to people at lunchtime and things. I hope you found it useful and a safe journey home. Thank you.